I like to tell all of my clients, we don't do New Year's resolutions. We start now. The fact that I've never sold a house. I'm not a real estate agent. I'm not affiliated with any type of brand. Therefore, I very feel comfortable speaking my mind.
What do you think are the things that are working on social moving into 2025? Welcome back to another episode of the REVB Podcast. I am excited for this week's guest to dig into all things video because she is an absolute powerhouse and wealth of knowledge in the game. What's going on, Giselle?
What's going on, friends? So good to see you. It's been a minute.
I am really excited. It's been a very long minute since I've seen you in person.
Yeah.
It's been too long.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. You had a baby.
We've all been going in good directions.
Another one.
You know?
It's a lot. There's a lot going on, but I'm grateful to be here. And if we're not already best friends online, my name is Giselle, and today we're going to talk about, what are we going to talk about?
Video.
Yeah.
So for people that don't know you, today you are a content creator, you are a coach, you are a speaker trainer, like you do a lot in the real estate space and in the speaking space and stuff like that, right? But how did you kind of get to where you are? Because I know that you've been doing video for a very long time. You've been in the media world for a very long time. So what does that journey kind of look like for you?
Yeah. And my claim to fame, even in the real estate space, is the fact that I've never sold a house. I'm not a real estate agent. I'm not affiliated with any type of brand. Therefore, I very feel comfortable speaking my mind without hurting anybody's feelings. But what I also like to say is, here's the thing. Real estate is a contagiously referral-based business. Therefore, my business has really taken off as both a coach and a speaker and a consultant in the real estate space all over, not just this country, but this world. And if I'm around agents and brokers and even surrounding industries like loan officers and even attorneys and designers, and if I can't understand what you're talking about, I guarantee you your client also doesn't understand what you're talking about. And so I'm not here to directly help you understand the landscape of real estate or the legalities of it. Instead, I'm helping you to become a more effective communicator. And I have a really unique skill set and experience because I was a TV host turned radio host, turned advertising executive, turned all of the things that I am now. But what's really interesting is that when I was pursuing this career in television in Los Angeles, now more than 15 years ago, I went to a top journalism school thinking that that would help me, and it didn't at all. Nobody cared. It was instead run more like a casting call, or you needed to know who it was in the room, or you had to sleep your way to the top, or you had to, stab a bunch of backs to get where you needed to go. And so I was given the advice that, okay, well, if you're not getting the jobs that you want in front of the camera, you should learn how to do everything in and around the camera. And that's the advice that I also give to anybody listening to this, because yes, absolutely, you can and should delegate certain things, and there are better uses of your time. But even if you just know a little bit about everything, it will help you to both give appreciation when appreciation is due. For example, the people who work really, really hard but make it look so easy, kind of like what a lot of people think about your job as a real estate agent. And also, it will allow for you to call it out when, for example, someone's not doing their job. And you know what they should be doing, and being able to say what they can do differently or bring in somebody else. But in doing so, what ended up happening was I saved up, bought a used camera, and I started to create videos in my apartment at the time. And I put them up on this little platform called YouTube, where I thought that nobody would see them. Like, let me just very, very, very stark contrast to what you do on this podcast, where you want more of the world to see. I legitimately, YouTube was so small at the time. I also had something called a blog, which I also had to explain to people even how to pronounce, where I was practicing my writing and my publishing and my urgency and hitting deadlines. And so I put videos up on this platform really where I thought nobody would see them, just so that I could practice being in front of the camera, but also using the camera. Most of my earliest videos, which I hate that I deleted them. Like that is also my advice. Do not delete your old videos. It is one of my biggest regrets deleting those videos, but all of them were out of focus. You still can find some of my older ones. Like I think my oldest one actually is 15 years old and my skin is so orange and my voice is so high because I was so nervous, and you can just see the insecurity, not necessarily in my communication, because I feel like I was an effective communicator, but I was trying to overcompensate in like every single thing that I was doing. I mean, if you make videos, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I entered this space at a very unique time, which was no one was talking about it. And yet here were these extraordinarily average 16 and 17-year-olds just rambling with videos, and they had hundreds of thousands and millions of views and subscribers, and nobody was talking about it. And I just didn't get it. I didn't understand it. Like, what do you mean? They're in their college dorm room. They're not wearing makeup. They're rambling on and on and on. They're not using any type of techniques. Like, what is it? Is it the title? Is it the captions? Is it the time of day that they're posting? Is it the day of the week that they're posting? Like, it has to be something, anything other than them. And it wasn't. It was recognizing how much more important the connection that they had and knowing who their audience is. And I hope that we go into that in the conversation too. Knowing who you're talking to was the single most important thing that led them to their successes, whether they knew it or not. And I studied it and like crazy. It was what helped me to differentiate myself when I got into those casting rooms, which I eventually did. And I did have a TV career. But then fast forward to 4 or 5 years ago, TikTok. You have a bunch of these extraordinarily average teenagers making these stupid videos at home in their pajamas and dancing around, and nobody gets it. And I was like, I've seen this movie before and I am not going to miss out on this opportunity because I now know the legs of how to use it. And I'm now old enough, as much as I hate to say it and love to say it, where I've seen the cycle repeat itself, where you can get really overwhelmed with trends and platform and how do I keep up? It's all the same shit. Like morning radio from back in the 80s and 90s, that was the original podcast. Local news, that is the original short form vertical video. You have a tease that then leads into a 30-second, 60-second, you get exactly what you need to know, and then back to the host. Like all of these things are just different ways in which we've been able to hold people's attention over all of these years. The difference is just the ways in which we're absorbing things. But I even look at notes that I gave to clients 15 years ago down to the edits, guys, it's identical. It is identical. The only difference is just the ways in which we're consuming and just the weight of the world. But even that it's so similar.
Yeah. There's two things that I took away from what you said. And the first was something like in maybe your first sentence that you were talking about. And that is that you have to kind of get the idea and work through all of the different parts of like for video content, like the creation and the editing and insert thing here. And so we recently were on a mastermind, Tim and I were, where, you know, we were having this little bit of a spirited debate on like hiring a videographer or doing it yourself for a little while. And like, they were using the example of Brad McCallum listing videos. And I'm like, okay, well, you're never going to like do them that well, even if you hire someone. So like, let's like talk about like being consistent and authentic and all of these things. But the thing that I really like is the framework, right? Like whether it's a long form video, whether it's a short form TikTok, whether it's a talking head thing, whatever it may be, like there is a certain framework that works for content and that does kind of show across all platforms. I would like to know from you, because this is what we distilled our mastermind down into the other day. How would you rank production quality, authenticity, and consistency as far as people's content go? Production quality, authenticity, and consistency. Like 1, 2, 3, what's most important when you're creating content?
Ooh, this is a good one. What did you say, by the way?
That's not part of the
question. We don't want to spoil your original thoughts.
No, I just want to know. I'm curious.
No wrong answers.
What did you just give me? You don't have to give me the explanation. Just tell me what you think, what you thought it was.
So for me, it's consistency, which Katie will laugh at me because I'm the least consistent out of anybody on the planet. Consistency and then authenticity and then production value. I think, you know, some people put authenticity first, but I think you have to get the habit of being consistent. And if you are consistent, you can figure out how to be more authentic. And if you can figure out how to be more authentic and you're being consistent, you can figure out production value. So that's kind of my take.
Katie, what about you?
I said the same thing because like if you are super authentic, but you only post one video a year, no one's like, they'll see it and then they'll forget about you.
Yeah.
So like there has to be a level of consistency in order to, you know.
And everybody agreed production value is at the bottom, which is cool.
Yeah.
Like it seems like people get it. So
well, and I also believe it depends upon what are we talking about in terms of platform, and also what are we talking about in terms of, again, who's our audience?
Yeah.
So, for example, in the early TikTok days, when you couldn't even really upload from your phone, or even if you would, there were people who would have great videos who were uploading very clearly produced film, and it wasn't doing well. Because when you compare it to the fact that everybody else on that platform was filming on their phones, and then all of a sudden you have high production value, even someone who was consistent and even someone who was authentic, it just looked out of place. It looked like somebody who walks into a room and shares an inside joke and yet hasn't even introduced themselves or like hasn't even provided context for what that joke is. But then say, for example, if you are presenting to a client and it's a one-time type of a thing where, yeah, production quality is going to matter significantly more, and following up consistently is going to be really, really important. And authenticity, you could play whatever role or chameleon that you need to be to get that particular deal. But I'm full agreement where I think generally speaking, and when it comes to social media, I think a lot of people use the production quality as their excuse. There are a lot of, and this goes significantly beyond social media, there are a lot of you who create illegitimate excuses out of legitimate excuses. And so what I mean by that is you might say, oh, I'm not making the videos because I don't have the videographer or the production quality. Or you might say, oh, I can't do it because my kid's this. Like, yeah, your kids are like a legitimate excuse, and you should put your family first. And also though, is that really legitimate? Like if you told your kid, hey, I didn't do it because of you, would they be like, why? Or would they be like, wow, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you were there. You know, there's just a lot of that. So yeah, I would say consistency, authenticity, and then the production value.
Glad we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
All right. So you've brought it up now a couple times. And when you're working with clients in helping them with their branding and helping with their video, let's talk a little bit about what that looks like to define what their audience is. Because I recently made the commitment, I shouldn't say this on a freaking pod, but I recently made the commitment.
Making it public.
To create a new YouTube channel, right? And so I am working to create all of the framework for it, but like we got super specific on what our client avatar is, because in the past, like we've just made like relocation content, but I was like, okay, no, we're gonna get like super specific on, you know, demographics and whatnot. So like, what do you do as far as like walking your clients through so that
same question. I just want to add something in. One of the things that I've observed is that agents are really good at making content for other agents. And I feel like that's the trap that all agents fall into. And the reason is because it's easy to understand that audience because we are agents. And so we know what to post to resonate with them. Like it's just really easy to understand how to connect with that audience. And then when you tell people to make content that connects with the general public and the consumer that they want to reach, all of a sudden they hit that wall. And so it's the same question that Katie was asking, but yeah, how do you break people out of connecting with an audience that's not always them and not the easiest audience to connect with maybe for them?
Yeah. So one thing that you're going to notice about me as a coach is I'm someone who I always want you to understand the why behind why I tell you to do something. And also in these instances, it's not that I'm telling you that you need to change who you are. It's just a matter of, okay, if this is the result that you want, or if this is the audience that you want to attract, or if this is where you want your trajectory to go, I like to look at social media and video specifically as a vehicle, not a destination. And what I mean by that is a lot of us look at social media whenever we're thinking about where you want your social media to go. The immediate reaction is, oh, I want to have a certain amount of followers. Oh, I want to have a certain amount of views. Oh, rather than, okay, but hold on. Why do you want those things? Where do you want it to take you? Where do you want your career to be 5 years from now? Why do you want to reach those types of people? Are you doing it because that's actually what you want? Or is it because another agent said that that's what they wanted, or because that's what they have. And then all of a sudden, what ends up happening is you burn out trying to achieve certain numerical values rather than the big picture of where you were actually hoping your career or your family would or your bank account would actually go. So when it comes to even figuring out who your audience is, well, what we start even before that is making sure that you understand, are you a personal brand or are you a business with a face? And that's typically where a lot of arguments are in terms of the types of content you should be creating, how much you should be niching down. Should you share your family? Should you not? Are you a real full person or not? And so I always want to take a moment and even pause there where it's, okay, let's figure out what's the difference between a personal brand and a business brand. A business brand is where you go to work. Chances are it also represents more than just you. It might represent a team or a community or just something that's significantly bigger than you. A personal brand is a person or a professional who goes to work. And businesses with faces, you need to have faces to build trust, but those faces also need to have personal brands attached. And there are a lot of people, even in the personal branding space, who say that they're helping you to design a personal brand, but they're not. They're helping you to design a business with a face. So even that's something that I think is important for anyone listening to this to really decide is, what are you building? Because if you're building a business with a face, you might be growing faster because you're niching down harder or you're picking your avatar. But really, truly decide, is this something that you want people to only go to you for what they can get from you? It's transactional. There's no relationship. It's just as much as possible. And then if you decide to leave this brokerage or this industry and this space, are you then going to disappear and forever? Could you sell that social media, and would you be fine with somebody taking that from you if they bought your business or your brokerage from you? Every now and then, that is the answer. They're like, I don't care. I just want to make as much money as possible. And then I'm out. I'm going to go disappear in the middle of, okay, cool. But for a lot of you, what you're hoping is that no matter what you do, if you decide to go into investing, if you decide that you want to have an e-commerce brand, if you decide that you want to write a book or become a speaker or whatever it is, you want to have a brand that continues to beat your drum and your rally cry beyond just a real estate transaction. You want it to grow with you, not for it to eventually be something that can be sold, quite frankly. And so that right there too is typically an eye-opening moment where people then realize, oh, interesting. Because again, if you're a business with a face, then that's also where you might want to get more specific about both what you do and who your audience is. But if you're a personal brand, and I would say, I think of more complex business brands this way as well, then I like to think of audience types as a happy hour assortment and not as just one single fake avatar. So what do I mean by that? And then I also even want to address a challenge, because I know people will be like, well, Giselle, what about Target? They don't have faces attached. I don't know who the CEO is. Okay, no, but Target does have faces attached to the brand. And who is that? Okay, well, let's think about even just the trend of the Target mom and the basic millennial mom. That right there is a face that attaches trust, that always talks about Target, whether or not they're getting paid to do it. When they do casting calls, they ask for real families and they ask for real people. When they're thinking about designing the layout of their store, you see brands that you recognize that are not just Target. You have celebrities that are attached. You have other brands that you do have faces attached to those brands that have influencers or celebrities or real people, or the red shirt and khakis, or the dog. So all of a sudden you realize, oh, wow, okay, I see myself in the brand. But then when we're thinking about the happy hour assortment, think about if you were at a happy hour or a conference or a wedding and you're sitting at a round table. Katie, you could be sitting across from me. And even though we're having a conversation, or even when I came into this podcast, you guys were having an existing conversation. And even though it's not directly to me, I can still listen in. And I perhaps could even participate if there's something that for me, I hear and it gauges my interest. But we sometimes think that if we're focusing our content on one particular audience that we might alienate somebody else. So, but I think about examples like I'll see something come up on my feed that says like, okay, boys, like this one's for you. And I'm like, what are you telling the boys? I want to know what are you telling the boys? What are you talking about?
It's like the TikToks where it's like this TikTok or this video is for Tim Macy. If you are not Tim Macy, then keep scrolling. If you're not Tim Macy, how often do you keep just watching it? You know what I mean? Yeah. Those I always laugh at those because I'm like, do I scroll? Do I stop? Do I scroll? Do I stop? Like,
well, and the more you dig into personal brand, I think that I see more and more, at least like our generation younger, wants to transact more with personal brands than big ones. So, if I follow somebody on Instagram, like Peter McKinnon came out with a jacket and I was like, I need to buy that jacket, and it sold out. And like, I bought this bag because it's a Peter McKinnon bag. Like, I would much rather buy a Peter McKinnon something or other than go buy a Louis Vuitton something or other. And so we live in a day where I think personal brands are becoming more and more impactful.
Right. Or even think about how many people saw any of us wearing Nikes and they said, "Oh, I want to wear it." But it's true. Like true. Even if if it is a known brand, but they want it more because of who's attached to it. Or, we see this at a lot of real estate conferences where, I mean, it's a little different now because the movie came out, but you'll ask the room, who's Phil Knight? Nobody has any idea. He's the founder of Nike. But you ask the room, who's Michael Jordan? Everyone knows that. Who do you think of when you think of Air Jordan? Michael Jordan. Or who do you think of when you think of Nike? You think of Michael Jordan because of Air Jordan. And so, like, absolutely all of those things. But it's important to recognize that you can have more than one audience. And especially now when so many of the different platforms are based off of recommendation, meaning that the AI is detecting what you're talking about in your video, what's in the caption of your video, who's watching your video. It's going to take that information and it's going to share it with people who are also searching for or watching videos with similar information. And so, for example, you could have a video, Katie, that is maybe all about moms in one, and then another one that's for real estate agents. And it's very possible that that video that is meant for moms will get in front of more moms, and the one that's meant for agents will get in front of more real estate agents. And you didn't have to put it on two different Instagram profiles. It still went to that same group of people because of the ways in which it's consumed. And I'm no longer seeing every single post that my friends post unless I actually engage with them. I'm simply only seeing the posts that seem relevant to me in that particular time. But that being said, we also don't want to do videos for absolutely everyone. We want to figure out like, okay, if I know that in the next 90 days or in the next year, there are 3 ways that I want to bring in revenue. And I would even say if you're listening to this or you're watching this and you're not driving, like write this down and think about this for a moment. What are the 3 main ways that you want to bring revenue into your business? And if it is real estate, okay, but like what are the 3 ways within that? Is it working with first-time home buyers? Is it working with only people who are listing their home? Is it only working with people who they're purchasing a second home or a vacation home? Is it only with people who want to do total tear down? Is it people who are doing new developments? Is it that you want to start making money from creating content? Is it that you want to make money from being on stage or taking brand partnerships? What are the top three ways that you want to figure out how you're bringing revenue into your business? If, of course, you're wanting to use social media to bring revenue into your business. So then it's okay, if these are the 3 ways that I want to bring revenue into my business, then who are the 3 decision makers who are predominantly going to be in charge of those revenue sources? So for example, one of my clients, Jennifer Schumacher, who's out of Arizona, for her, she came to me and she was like, well, but Giselle, like the first time home buying content is what gets me the most views. But I don't really like necessarily working with first-time home buyers unless I already know you and love you. Like I'm ready to get to that next step. And her eyes would light up when she was talking about helping families buy their first investment property. In fact, one of the phrases that she said was, I believe that if you have the means, you should buy a home for every child and have that be what funds your college fund as they get older. And she could talk about it for hours. And I was like, why are we not creating content for those people? And she goes, well, yeah, but I don't get as many views whenever I talk about that. That doesn't matter.
But who cares?
It's not about, because if your goal is that you want to transform your business, not get many views. If you get a lot of views, great. But if that doesn't turn into business, and most importantly, business that you actually like with clients who you enjoy taking care of, then that's just going to burn you out and make you feel more miserable and continue to put you into this cycle of working harder than you need to, because there would be somebody else who would love. I absolutely have clients who for them, they feel like their calling in life is working with first-time home buyers. Like, it makes them so flippin' happy. They could cry about it when they talk about it. And so you want to think about, okay, who are the 3 key decision makers who I need? And that's how you then figure out the messaging. But what's important to recognize is that even if you come up with 3 separate people, let's just say that for you, it is that you love working with first-time home buyers. It's that you love people who are moving into their second home and where they're expanding their family. And let's just say that you want to start speaking on stages. Okay, let's just say that those are the 3 avenues that you want to start making revenue. So who are those 3 decision makers? The third would be event planners. The 2 are pretty obvious. Just because you are putting content of you on stage talking about real estate doesn't mean that you're going to turn off the first-time home buyers or the ones who are upgrading into another home. If anything, you're elevating your thought leadership, and they're going, that's interesting. They must really know what they're doing. Or even if you're talking about the first-time home buying stuff and you're answering the most basic questions, me as someone who I'm going through this for who knows how many times, I'm going to watch that video and go, that person explains things really, really well. I wouldn't feel stupid asking a question to that particular person. You're still building trust, or maybe you even add to that story. Maybe, and this is what I love ends up happening, is when you have a former client that then comments, I will never forget what you did for us when you helped us to get into our first home. And then all of a sudden you have a testimonial, you have a conversation, you have that happy hour assortment where you're building trust, you're creating conversation, and that's actually helping you. And I think I saw this the most when I was working at the advertising agency, and we had a client who they were spending the most money on agent attraction and on direct to consumer, getting clients into their brokerage in terms of their ads. And so the agent attraction content was all about their team culture and their core values and the benefits that you get when you come and work for them as an agent. And what was so interesting was that ad actually performed the best, not only for agent attraction, but also for direct to consumer. And we began to change our direct to consumer ads into those ads because people were going, I want to work with a broker or an agent who has a team like that. That looks like it would be happy agents who work together, who collaborate. They're constantly getting extended education. I want to work with someone like that. And so when you figure that out, you can start to even figure out your content cadence a little bit more. Okay, let me look at my first 6 or 9 tiles. Do I have something for audience number 1? Do I have something for audience number 2? Do I have something for audience number 3? In some cases, you'll have videos that they can meet all 3 of that criteria. And in some cases, it might just be 1 and 2. But that doesn't mean that audience number 3 isn't watching or listening, because they want to see how you move. And that's what's most important. And I think what's also important to recognize is that if you are trying to reach someone new, the way that they reach out to you, it's not going to be by following you. It's not going to be by commenting on your shit. It's going to be by creeping on you. And so you want to continue, even if you're not getting that direct response, priming your audience and giving them bingeable content to where they then feel like they're racking up all of those touch points, all of those trust points, hearing your voice and seeing your story and seeing the people who they've helped and seeing themselves hopefully in your content, that they would then go, okay, I'm ready to reach out. And at that point, that sale is yours and yours to lose, whether or not you match who they believe you say you are in your feed.
So one, I think you said you made me think about the fact that first-time homebuyer content that's doing well, and that's their best content. And then they do the content that they want to do and it doesn't do well. And sometimes you have to look at the fact that, if you want to tweak your audience, if you want to repivot who your audience is, and you want to do different things, you may see a drop in performance at first because it's going in front of people that aren't interested in that. But you have to stick with it to get people interested in it, right? And to get people going. But I think that is definitely that speed bump that some of us hit, is that it's like, oh, well, no, this content actually does better and gets more views, so I'm going to keep doing it. And then that audience keeps getting bigger and bigger. And then, it's hard to like turn around from it because you're like, crap, I built this audience of first time home buyers, but I actually want to go do this. And nobody like Katie starting a new YouTube channel wants to rip that Band-Aid of changing their audience after they've built any, like, it doesn't matter if you have 100 people following you or 1,000 people following you or 10,000 people following you. You've put in work to build that audience, and it's hard to rip that Band-Aid to say, you know what, I'm going to start all over, or I'm going to tweak my content to go after the outcomes that I want. That's never an easy one.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So speaking of tweaks, what advice would you give, or what do you think, there's no like magic formula, but like, what do you think are the things that are working on social moving into 2025?
Well, and a little piece that I think is really important that often gets neglected is even that mindset piece too. I don't want to like rush ahead without even getting your head in the game is so important, because sometimes too, the reason why some of those newer videos or audience shifts don't work out in the way that you want to is because you don't even believe yourself. So you're creating the content already filled with doubt. And when you're wondering why it's not resonating, it's because, well, yeah, I could see in your face written all over it that you were in your head the whole time. And the spark that you have in that audience that you feel really comfortable with, it's not coming out in that kind of a way. And so even for those of you who are wanting to make a shift or make a pivot, or you're feeling defeated by all of the different headlines, or you really think that the election is going to play whatever role in your career directly, yeah, we can see it in your eyes. And what's so important, I believe, in 2025, and like, I like to tell all of my clients, we don't do New Year's resolutions. We start now. If you want to have a strong 2025, you're starting in October. If you want to have a strong January 1, you're starting October 1. And so it's really establishing what is the relationship that you want to have with your audience and with your clients in 2025. And that's something that gets very, very lost is establishing, okay, you know what your messaging is supposed to be. You know who your audience is, but who do you need to be for them? Who do you need to be for them? Are you an educational resource? Are you a best friend? Are you a business partner? Are you figuring it out right alongside them? What does that relationship feel like and for you? And then I also feel like at this point, it's like, if you're not doing the videos, you got to do the videos. But I also think it's important for people to recognize that, and I've been saying this for years and years and years and years and years, which is that your phone and your TV are going to become more and more and more one and the same. I don't know, like, do you guys watch YouTube or TikTok on your TVs now?
YouTube on TV every night.
And so you want to be thinking about, okay, so now, like, I like to use the example of how, back in the day, we used to have presets in our car for what we would listen to.
Back in my day.
Right?
That's right. Yeah.
Right. And so
jamming
now,
107.7 on button number 1.
Yeah. And so what we're seeing is a fusion between the presets on the radio and also the new on demand, where you go to Netflix and you pick whatever show you want and you can pick whatever season and whatever episodes. We're going to start seeing even more and more and more a fusion of that. And so what I've been telling my clients for years is you really want to be thinking about your content like a playlist. And there's a lot of different variations of that. Just how, for example, if you wanted to turn on TV, you could watch reality, you could watch a documentary, you could watch something scripted, you could watch a game show. All of those things exist and it's totally fine. But you also want to start thinking about, okay, how can I create a relationship? And what is the way that I want to create my relationship? Is it by having appointments? So for example, in radio, we would say, set the appointment. Okay, guys, listen tomorrow at 7:30. We're going to give away tickets for Taylor Swift. Be caller 10. That's 7:30 on Wednesday. Or new episode drops on Wednesday. People know that you're going to come back. You're establishing that consistency. It might be having bits. And again, what I'm really doing here is showing you how, like, none of this shit is original. It's just that we're seeing it packaged in a different way. So, for example, bits, like we can think about how Jimmy Fallon has thank you notes, or he has his top 10, or he has like some of those different games that he plays over and over and over again. It's not every single day, but you know some of those little episodic bits, or when we think about radio, War of the Roses, or like some of those like old competitions. So what are some of the bits that you have? Katie has her sneaker unboxing. Like, what are some of the bits that are helping us to get to know you or seeing how you engage with other people? How are you collaborating? That's also something that I feel like everybody needs a reminder of, because when we look at any person who's ever been on a screen, but especially when it comes to the YouTubers that grew and so quickly in the 2000s, one of the things that the top YouTubers did was collaborations. Now, though, we're seeing that in terms like this, really. Podcasters, interviews. You're having someone who's coming on the show and they're bringing a different audience, and also your audience is getting exposed to their audience. You see the common value, you see them getting along, you see them interacting. And there are a lot of people who I go to your profile and I'm like, do you even have friends? Like, do you do anything other than work? Like, what is it like when you're communicating with other people? We're really trying to just scale the human experience here. So collaborations, figuring out what's the authentic way for you to have collaboration on your profile, because some people are terrible interviewers. Quite frankly, they shouldn't do that. Or they go on live and it's just awkward. But for some of you love to do that. So is it going live regularly, or is it collaborating in person? You do events together and then you just take the pictures afterwards and you talk about those partners. Is it by showing appreciation? How are you doing more of those collaborations? But I really do think the people who are absolutely going to win in 2025 are the people who have an audio component as well as a video component, and each one can stand alone. And so what that means is I can keep listening to you in my car. I can watch you at home. I can start listening to you while I'm getting ready, but then I can listen to you again later on or on the plane. And being able to keep that relationship going for as long as possible versus those who have a singular relationship where you're only on one platform and you only have one type of content, where I'm not getting to see some of those different layers. And so you just need to decide, how is that multi-channel, multi-sensory experience going to occur? And for some of you, it's even talking on the phone. That's an audio experience on its own, or having the FaceTime, like some of those real life things. How are we combining the offline and the online and making it as multidimensional as possible?
I think my takeaway from what you just said is do you even have friends? And so I think that you were probably pulling up Tim Macy's profile and you were like, does he even have friends?
No,
was really where you were going with that. Am I correct in that assumption, or
no,
am I off base here?
I've got the opposite problem. Like, I have all my friends are online.
Too many?
I have like online friends, which is weird, all from my neighborhood. I'm like,
none in real life.
I should probably get some real life friends instead of just Instagram friends everywhere.
Yeah. If you're not taking those online relationships offline, Tim, what are you doing? I haven't seen you in years.
That's a great point. Great point. No, I think one of the pieces that I was thinking about, Katie, since you took your opportunity to make a mean joke about me, no, I'm joking, is that there's this idea of make super niche content that's just about the thing you want to sell. So just make content about houses and build a 1 to 10,000, follower, subscriber following audience and get a pretty high conversion rate. Or do you think about the audience you want and you don't think about what your end goal is? You just think about what they want to see and building a community around a much larger audience. And then all of a sudden you've got 100,000 followers that may convert at a lower rate, but you've built trust and opportunity in that. So, if I had a product, like if I was trying to sell Stanley Cups to moms, like I could talk about how great Stanley Cups are. And I don't know how many people would follow me. On the same hand, if I was making content about how hard it is to be a mom and like all the funny things we see being a mom, and all of a sudden I have a bunch of moms following me, all I do is go like this and I love my Stanley Cup, and boom, I've sold a bunch of Stanley Cups. And so it's this different idea. Like, I think too many times in the content when you're talking about making content and all this different stuff, I think when you talk about objectives, I think some people mix up where they're like, okay, I want to sell houses to luxury people. And it's like, okay, well, you may actually have to post about cars and watches and talk about the boating thing that's going on down the street. Like, you have to talk about stuff that they care about.
Yeah.
You're probably going to sell a house. You can't just go on there and try to talk to them about just what you want to sell.
Yeah. I like to, one of the frameworks that I even talk about is you have to make your audience human. And I haven't thought about this one in a minute, so I'm hoping that I get down to each letter, but H stands for heartbeats. So who are the people who are most important to them in their life? Like, who for them is most important? Is it family? Is it themselves? Is it their employees, their work? U is understanding, showing that you understand their terms and on your terms and your terms and on their terms. So breaking it down into ways that they actually get it. But the key part of what I also wanted to talk about from this framework, even if I don't get to the A in the N, is that the M portion is money. What's their relationship with money? And how are you showing that you understand their relationship to money? Because a lot of people do think, oh, luxury, I need to show the watches and the cars. But in actuality, depending on how you define luxury, you have to be a lot more subtle than that. Because somebody who owns a private jet isn't saying, look at me and my private jet. They're just on the private jet. Or they're going to certain country clubs or golf courses, and they're not saying, oh my gosh, look at how fancy all the caviar is. They're just going, hey, welcome to the golf club. This is my day. You know, or they're going to the Eras Tour for like the 4th or 5th time in like another country. And those are really, really, really important. Even just an understanding that, you know, for you, whatever your commission means for you, a lot of times we look at that in a very selfish way where you're going, well, I want to get paid for all of my work. Okay, great. But then also help me as, again, the consumer, help me understand what a difference that makes. Because there was a legitimate, I went through this personally myself, where the difference was $10,000. Do I have $10,000? Sure. Over time, is $10,000 going to be a lot? No. But in that particular moment, I was really having to decide between fertility treatments. So for me, $10,000 is fertility treatments. So do I really want to put that towards a home right now? Or do I want to put that towards my potential future family 10 years from now? And if I have to decide between the two, I think I'm probably going to go in this lens. And so it's really understanding where are they at in their lives and what is their relationship with money and putting it into terms that they actually understand. And then A, of course, is knowing your audience. And N is what I say is naming your audience and calling them by name. So it might be people who live in Houston. It might be people who love Taylor Swift. And I know I've mentioned that a couple times. And the only reason why it's top of mind, because right before I got on this call, I had a client who said that the reason why she chose to work for me, she'd been following me for years, and she saw a video of me in the Peloton studios screaming Taylor Swift as I was running on the treadmill. And it sounds so stupid, like, Giselle, that has nothing to do with coaching, that has nothing to do with real estate, that has nothing to do with speaking. But for her, and here's my question too, that I want to make sure people know is, how are you demonstrating your values, which are an opportunity to connect with the people who don't know you yet? And I go, tell me more. Like, in my head, I think it makes sense, but tell me what you got from that Taylor Swift video. And she goes, well, you're on a Peloton and you're wearing Lululemon. So right away, in terms of the designers that you support, it's on the tier that she is.
You just hit a sensitive spot for Katie and I, because every time we travel somewhere, we always, for some reason, I don't know if it's something about like magneticism in our phones, but we end up in a Lululemon store buying stuff.
Right?
Wearing Kim's wearing right now.
Yeah.
Right? It's just the same thing happens to me too. Same thing. So I fully understand it. And maybe this is our sign to start a support group or something. But then she was also like, I am watching you get coached by a coach. I'm seeing you push yourself. I'm seeing you sweat. I'm seeing you get uncomfortable. And I love that you're getting uncomfortable, because that makes me feel like, okay, I have a coach who also believes in coaching. And then also you're singing and dancing to Taylor Swift. She was like, you reminded me of my girlfriend who I feel like I could call up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning and just shoot shit with. And you would answer and you would probably make me smile, and you seemed really optimistic and you're persistent in your workouts. We see Katie and how much she works out. She's not a gymfluencer, but she could be. But really it's going, what you're gathering is, okay, this is somebody who she shows up. She shows up She pushes herself. She's an early bird. She's making it work. She's eliminating excuses. She's going to get the job done. And she starts her day doing hard things, even and especially with a kid and another on the way. Like, which bravo to you. And so how are you demonstrating your values, and how are you using those to open up conversations with other people? That's a human piece that a lot of people miss.
Human. I love it. So yeah, I think that for our next content shoot and our support group, we should have it at Lululemon in whichever city we all find ourselves in together at the next point in time.
Well, we agree we're only going to buy 4 items each.
Or less. 4 or less.
Yeah, or less. Okay. Who does less? Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
At least 4? I heard at least 4.
12 total. How's that?
This is why we have a problem. Yes.
12 total. All right. Giselle, for someone who doesn't already follow you, where is the best place for them to connect with you?
These days, Instagram is my favorite place to play, and I've been dipping my toe into LinkedIn as well. But my DMs are always open, and I love connecting with people there and keeping conversations going there. And who knows, maybe you'll find me wandering the streets of Texas in the near future at a Lululemon in Austin or something.
There's a lot of streets in Texas.
Texas is a large state that I know you're aware of, but yeah, who knows? Who knows?
I want to thank you for having on.
Thank you, guys.
Hearing you today was like a breath of fresh air with like a different outside perspective, and I think for our audience, it was a nice little change of pace, and I hope hope our people got some good stuff from it.
And it's so important because you guys probably repeat yourselves a lot. But what we want to remind ourselves is that people are always in different spaces, places, times, and seasons when they hear things. And sometimes someone might hear something from Tim, but they don't take it as seriously unless they hear it from Katie. And vice versa, which is also just a good reminder of how we have to repeat ourselves as content creators too. Because you have new people who are coming in all the time. And I even think about like working out with a trainer. I know how to do a squat and by myself, but I wouldn't do it if I didn't have someone yelling at me to do it, or waiting for me at the gym, or like charging me for not showing up. And that's why it's important to have coaches. That's why it's important to have community. And that's why it is important to always go back to the basics.
Love it.
I love it. You're the best.
You're the best.